In this video, I'm going to talk about reflexes, and I'm just going to give you the definitions for the specific reflexes. There are 6 of them, and then in class we're going to actually watch videos of these reflexes, at least some of them in kids. But I want you to have just the specific definitions in class, so I'm not writing those down. So again, there's 6 of them that I want you to know. The first one is the rooting reflex. This is one of the ones that is used for survival. It's used for feeding. So the rooting reflex is when an infant's cheek is stroked, or the side of mouth. And the infant turns the head towards that side. And again, this is connected to survival. This is connected to eating. The assumption is that it's going to help with nursing. So if the side of the cheek is touched by like the breast, then if the baby turns that way, bam, you got your food. So rooting is there from birth, helps with food. The other one that helps with survival in terms of eating is the sucking reflex. And the sucking reflex is basically newborns suck on anything that is placed in their mouth. So again, this is connected with feeding. A lot of babies engage in non-nutritive sucking until about 1 year of age. So think stick a pacifier in, the kid's happy, even though the kid's not getting any nutrition, no food, still happy. Thumb sucking is totally normal. It's a form of soothing. So at birth, it can be connected to nutrition seeking, but it can also be connected to soothing behavior and kids learning to self-soothe by sucking their thumb or a pacifier or something along those lines. But those are 2 that are directly connected to feeding that are reflexes. Another reflex is the Moro reflex. The Moro reflex is when newborns arch their back and fling out their arms and legs, and then sort of move to almost a hug type thing when they're startled or they think they're falling. So I'll write that down first. So the newborn arches its back, flings out its arms and legs, then returns to an embrace-like movement, basically like they're hugging. And again, you'll definitely see a video in class of this. And it comes when the baby is startled or has a feeling of falling. And they think this tends to disappear about 3 to 4 months. They think this might be an evolutionary thing, sort of like a holdover from previous times. So, for example, this would be very good for you to see in like apes. If you are an ape baby hanging out in a tree with your mama and all of a sudden you start to fall, if you naturally swing your arms around for a hug, you're more likely to grab on your mom before you actually fall out of that tree. So it's potentially a survival mechanism to help you from actually falling because you'll grab on. This is one reason why swaddling very young kids, those first 3 to 4 months, can be beneficial, because if they get that sense of falling when they're sleeping, they'll startle themselves awake with the Moro reflex. Or if you're putting them down in their crib as you're laying them down, that can be a sensation of falling because they are going down, and that will wake them up because they can't control that Moro reflex for the first few months. So this is one reason why swaddling the arms and legs can assist in sleep, because it prevents that Moro reflex from waking the kid up. If the Moro reflex comes from sound, we call that the startle reflex. So I'll actually to distinguish that a little. So you jerk when you hear it. So it looks similar to the Mora reflex, that arching back, the flinging arms, but it is from sounds. The Mora reflex is from a sensation of falling. So that's 4. The next one to go over would be the grasping reflex. And the grasping reflex, when something touches an infant's palm, the infant grasps it. So again, this is present from birth. It tends to diminish by about 3 months as a reflex. I mean, kids older than 3 months are going to grasp something, but that's more voluntary. Reflexes are more involuntary. And again, this can be a potential survival thing if you're holding on. You can't be dropped as easily. So that's the grasping reflex. Another one, the Babinski. And the Babinski and the stepping reflex are both connected to the feet. The Babinski is when the sole of the foot is touched and babies spread out their toes. So it opens up the toes when the sole of the foot is touched. And the other foot reflex to know about is the stepping reflex. And you'll see a little bit about this in the documentary. You'll see in class probably if you get to that point. And this is when a newborn's feet touch a surface. They do a step-like movement. So it looks as if they're stepping, even if they're just like a day old, it looks like they're walking. They're not actually walking. It's a reflex. And so this one will actually go away after a few months, but it will reappear if you put the kid in water. It's almost like their legs get too fat for this reflex to happen, but when you put them in water and thus the legs are more weightless, it reappears again. So all of these would be reflexes. They are things that are present from birth, tend to disappear. Usually 3 to 4 months is when a lot of these disappear, although it depends. And even like the startle reflex, you've got that. If you hear something loud, you might get startled as well. But most of these are somehow connected to survival in some way. And although some of these might have a genetic component, there is some more current research that says that infants can deliberately control movements. It might not be exclusively genetic. So those are the ones to throw in your notes.